D.S. Palmer back here with the DP Show. I just spent the last 15 minutes trying to ruin the Olympics for you, and now I'm really going to throw it into high gear. You could say that the first 15 minutes was the tricky part of the 200-meter dash where you got to come around that curve. Now I'm really going to throw it into overdrive as I approach the straightaway. Oh, yes, an Olympic metaphor from somebody who just got done bad-mouthing the Olympics. It's the kind of irony that I like to deal with. Ho, ho. Ho, ho, ho. See, what I have been saying before is that the Olympics are nothing more than boring backstories put in front of boring sports that everybody just lies to themselves about caring about over and over again, because if we really were that interested in track and field and swimming and gymnastics, we would watch it besides, the Olympics, but that doesn't happen. And for some reason, the Olympics turns into this great ratings boon that I have been trying so hard to understand, especially after I got into broadcasting. Can't do it, and the only thing I can come back to is the horrible backstories. The absolutely horrible backstories that keep people glued in while they trick themselves into thinking they're actually watching athletic competition. They're not. They're watching a soap opera. All right? I just summed up the last 15 minutes for you. But here's what's also going on with the Olympic Games, and this is one of the biggest reasons that I'm boycotting right now. I have been citing John W. Whitehead, his column posted on LouRockwell.com over the weekend, London 2012 Olympics, the staging ground for the coming police state. This is what else is going on right now with these Olympics. He had written that in addition to the usual tourist sites such as Buckingham Palace, the Tower of London, and Big Ben, visitors to London may find themselves goggling at the military aircraft carrier floating in the Thames and the Typhoon fighter jets taking to the skies, ready to shoot down unauthorized aircraft, aerial drones hovering overhead to track residents and tourists, snipers perched in helicopters, and my personal favorite, an 18-kilometer high, 11-mile long, I think that's 18-meter high, 11-mile long, 5,000-volt electric stun fence surrounding Olympic Park, and 55 dog teams patrolling the perimeter of that 5,000-volt electric stun fence surrounding Olympic Park. Now, I told you before that the fella who had come up with this concept of the Olympics, a Frenchman by the name of Pierre de Coubertin, had said that one of the reasons we need to revive the Olympic tradition is because peace will have received a new and strong ally in these athletic competitions. And what we're seeing now in 2012 is that, in fact, there is no peace that comes along with it. In fact, to keep the peace from some unknown force that is going to purportedly try to terrorize these Olympic Games, we have taken the entire peaceful concept and dismissed it summarily. Thank you for dropping by. We don't want you around these parts. Peace. What do we want around these parts? We want aircraft carriers. We want jets. We want drones. We want electric fences. And we want 55 dog teams. All these and more are supposedly part of the new security apparatus required to maintain security in the age of terror, wrote John W. Whitehead. Or in other words, in order to have the Olympic Games and the peace that they bring, we have to keep that peace with force. This seems like it's completely contradictory to the original reason that we are going to have these Olympic Games. Okay, but I got more. Roughly 13,000 private security guards provided by G4S, the world's second largest private employer, will be patrolling the streets of London under a $439 million contract with the British government. Due to some last-minute troubling recruiting and training guards, 3,500 additional British military troops will be called in, making a total of 17,000 troops scheduled to police the Olympics. These games of peace requires 17,000 troops to ensure as much. And furthermore, a $430 million contract? Excuse me, 439, that's almost $440 million at a time when we cannot afford this, especially all the different Western states that are demanding bailouts right now. Do we need to go back over that? Do we? But just go through Europe. Greece, hundreds of millions of dollars, please. Spain, hundreds of millions of dollars, please. Italy, it's expected to be waiting for hundreds of millions of dollars. Please, just go to the British Isles. Right? Ireland is rumored to have needed a bailout and was getting a little bit, though they're going about a little bit differently than our Greece. Right there, right next to London, you have the prime example of why we probably should not be spending $439 million to secure a party a track and field and swimming and gymnastic party. Why are we trying to afford this stuff at this time? Well, because if we don't, then the terrorists have already won. Gosh, then what? We wouldn't pretend like watching people run in straight lines is fun? What would we do then? I'm going to spend $440 million to make sure of it. That's what I'm going to do. But how about the best part? And this is something I've been asking everybody because I have to do quite a bit of flying, and nobody ever has a good answer for it. If you got a good response, I want to hear from you. Go to the Facebook, go to the YouTube, leave me a comment, do something to try to get something in here against me. More than 500 American federal agents trained in the methods of security theater will be on hand to assist Britain's security forces. In fact, the CIA, State Department, and FBI have all been working closely with British authorities for well over a year in preparation for the Olympic Games. Now, over a year, all these different security agencies have been trying to root out and get ready to figure out who the bad guys are that may come and disturb the peace. My question is, do we need both? Do we need 1 year worth of surveilling and snooping and spying on potential threats to try to figure out who they are, and then the 18-meter high, 11-mile long, 5,000-volt electric stun fence surrounding Olympic Park, and 55 dog teams and the aircraft carriers and the planes and the drones and the tens of thousands of troops to make sure that these guys that we should already know about aren't around? Wouldn't one or the other be good, especially since Western countries are busted and broke? But this is a question not just for the Olympics. This is one for everybody. Anybody who's flown, now that they're expanding the TSA to all these different bus terminals and trains and all that stuff, do we need both? Do we need both? I think one or the other ought to be sufficient. If we're going to spend a year in anticipation for these things, snooping and spying and prying and all that stuff, we probably don't need to have the electric fence to keep them out. You should already have a pretty good idea about who is a threat. Or is that not what the Olympic Games are about? Because what Whitehead's suggesting is this might be a dry run for what we can all expect in the future, no matter where you are, right? We already got the spy apparatus. Maybe they're trying to figure out how maybe it's just working a little bit more traditional military types. Potentially. All right? But here's my favorite. Here's the all-time favorite. Because the other thing that we're experiencing here, according to our French father in the Olympics, was free trade of the future, or spreading around all of these wonderful different athletic events, athletes, countries finding all this great pride, the great-natured competition. You win some, I win some. We go away friends. There's no reason to start blowing each other up, whatever, and all that stuff with the free trade. Here is some of the free trade that is going on in London with the 2012 Olympics. There have been security patrol tasked with making sure that local businesses observe the government ban on symbols and words relating to the Olympics. There have been security patrols tasked with making sure that local businesses observe the government ban on symbols and words relating to the Olympics. That's not free trade. All right? Government-sanctioned trade is not free, even if it is just every 4 years with the Olympics. Why are we doing this? Lest they cause economic harm to the official corporate sponsors. This is essentially another bailout. Just the same way that different conservative groups were outraged when all these different banks started getting bailed out, incidentally at the end of the George W. Bush presidency. But this whole concept of something being too big to fail was rightly decried as being not capitalistic, and that we were descending into some sort of socialism and all that stuff. You were right then. You're right now. Okay? If somebody can push Olympic goods much more better than somebody else, then they should be allowed to in a real free trade situation. But instead what we have are thugs making sure that different people are not going to cause harm to the official corporate sponsors. What have they been up to? Well, they are authorized to enter businesses, look for violations, and then impose fines up to £20,000 or $31,000. Might be a great way to try to pay for some of the $440 million that they need to keep this place secure. But also, this is where it starts to get a little bit ridiculous. Now remember, when the banks need this, is perfectly understood because, well, without the banks, then nobody's going to be able to get loans and the economy is going to start screeching to a halt. This is the exact same thing. And by not loudly opposing those sorts of bailouts for that crony capitalism, this is what you're paving the way to. Including on the banned list are such words as games, 2012, gold, silver, bronze, summer, sponsors, and London. Or if you are somewhere around the Olympic Village and you're pushing stuff like that, you're opening the door to the possibility of a $31,000 fine. You're being ridiculous, Palmer, you might be saying to yourself. Am I? Because so far, according to John W. Whitehead, a London cafe has been forced to remove 5 offending bagels from its windows because it looked like the Olympic symbol. And so did a butcher who had fashioned sausages into the same sort of scenario. Spectators who have been warned that to risk wearing a garment adorned with a Pepsi logo may result in being banished from game venues, and that nobody but McDonald's can sell French fries. Now, the Pepsi one I think is especially ridiculous because essentially what Coke is saying is to make sure that they get the greatest return on the investment is to make sure that no other cola drinks are going to be sold near the Olympics. What makes sense in a real free trade scenario is Coke would make the investment to try to have as much of the market as possible, but to make sure that it was going to have as much sales as it could, it would create a product that people would choose rather than Pepsi. Or, in other words, Coke wants to continue to churn out disgusting soft drinks. I'm a Pepsi man. And then just force everybody to drink it because of crony capitalism, lined up with the different Olympic Games in London and all these different government officials. This should outrage everybody who claims to be a conservative who does not want any sort of governmental intervention in their lives. All right, the same people who are uptight about Obamacare and the bailouts and whatever else has been happening, especially over the last 4 years, if you're truly outraged by that, you should be outraged by this spirit that has been overcoming these television events that you love so much. Okay? What should you do about it? Well, I'd say stay away. I would say get rid of the police apparatus, especially one that we cannot afford, and try to make way for something that is truly peaceful. Or if we can't do that, then why can't we just open things up to a real free market and reduce governmental intervention that way? All right. What you're going to find out is when you really do make the effort toward a truly free market, it naturally provides peace. Because you don't have to coerce people into doing what you want them to do. Now, that does not make sense in our current state of affairs, meaning governmental, whether that be in the United States, Britain, wherever. And that is why what we have with the Olympics is just the continuation and expansion of the police state. So enjoy the track and enjoy the field and enjoy the swimming and certainly enjoy the gymnastics. But don't be surprised when it becomes hard to buy a soft drink that isn't sanctioned by the United States of America. Because it's just coming attractions. I tend to agree with John W. Whitehead. Now, on to something a little bit lighter. The Diamondbacks, 7 of 10 at the most recent homestand, though now forced to go back on the road where the D-backs haven't been playing quite as well. Now, the really worst part of that is they're going to play a Dodger team who just got done with a 10-game homestand of their own, and that involved 6 wins from sweeps, swept the Mets and the Giants. And they used those wins to get back into first place. The good news for the Diamondbacks, Trevor Cahill is going for the D-backs, and he has pitched very well against the Dodgers. I can give you those numbers. 2-0 with a 1.96 ERA and 15 strikeouts and 18 and a third innings against the Dodgers. Plus, the Diamondbacks just traded for a bit of a boost in the lineup. Got a player who they're going to actually put at third, though he was playing short. From Houston, Chris Johnson, who is hitting .429 in his last 9 games. On the season, .279 with 21 doubles and 8 homers. So the Diamondbacks did a little bit to shore up the left side of their infield. Looks like they're going to keep going with Stephen Drew and Justin Upton for the time being. But remember, 17 of the next 20 are on the road, beginning with these 3 against the Dodgers. And the Dodgers are playing with Hanley Ramirez at home for the first time. So it's going to be wild. That's coming up next on iTalk 106.7. Thanks a lot. I've been D.S. Palmer. Good night.